Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful Sabbath and for allowing me to be here to share my testimony. Please be your words that flow out of my mouth and not my own, and that they may be a blessing to all those who hear me. In your name we pray, amen. I know that not all of you know me here, so I'm going to start off by introducing myself. I am the daughter of Mayra and Mayra Ramirez, and they're with us here today. If my parents can please stand up, si pueden levantarse por favor. That is my mother, Maria, and my father, Abu. My dad is from Mexico, and my mom is from Nicaragua. I am currently studying at Wichita State University, and I am in my third year there. I am majoring in Biomedical Engineering and minoring in General Business. I am the third of 4 children. I have one older brother, one older sister, and one younger brother. And you can see us there on the pictures on the right. I grew up in Great Bend, Kansas. I was born in Garden City, Kansas, though. And I was born in the church. So I've always been involved at our church there in Great Bend. You can see up here on the picture on the left, I had the privilege of being a director for the Vacation Bible School that my mom and I conducted in Nicaragua. And then on the pictures on the right, on the top right, I don't remember this, but I think my mom told me that I was participating during the morning lesson for the students. And then on the lower right corner, we were having a youth worship at our church for our evening vespers. The title of my sermon today is Made to Soar, and I'm going to go ahead and read Isaiah 40:31 once more. And it says, "Youths may become faint and weary, and young men stumble and fall, but those who trust in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not become weary." Throughout my entire journey, this verse has been one that has been a great blessing to me. And I'm going to take you guys through why this verse has helped me and every experience that I've had that this verse has been an answer from God. So in school, I attended Great Bend High School, and I was involved in several organizations. I was a Girl State delegate, I was the president for a robotics club, and I was also named a Kansas Honor Scholar. I was also a member of National Honor Society, America's Promise, and Student Ambassadors, and these are just a few that I was involved in. I was also a multi-sport athlete. I was a soccer player since my middle school years. And when I started soccer in high school, I was a varsity starter as a freshman and later became varsity captain. My journey started one day in soccer conditioning. We weren't allowed to play on these soccer fields because the official soccer season hadn't started, so we were practicing on the track at school at the same time as the cross-country team. When we finished our soccer practice, we were told to run a mile, and I remember I used to think, the faster I run, the faster I finish. So I was running pretty fast, and I didn't notice at the time that the cross-country coach was timing me. So at the third lap around the track, I had already lapped my entire soccer team. And by the time I finished my run, the cross-country coach was waiting for me. And he told me, have you ever thought about joining the cross-country team? I told him not really, and my reasoning was I knew there was a lot of Saturday meets. So I didn't really see the point of running on the cross-country team if I wasn't going to be running at all the meets. So I told him that I hadn't really thought about it, and he told me that he had timed me while I had ran around the track, and he thought I would be a great addition to the team. And he told me to think about it. So I said, okay. And then that year, I ended up finishing my soccer season, I ended up being elected as one of the top 10 players in our conference. I was working very hard. I was trying to get scholarship offers through soccer. And after that soccer season, I told my parents, I'm going to go ahead and give cross country a try. It was the end of my sophomore year, and I had already been elected to be a varsity captain for my junior year. So I thought cross country would be great conditioning for soccer. So I prayed with my mom before my informational meeting for cross country, and I was nervous. And you might think, well, there's no need to be nervous for an informational meeting. But at this time in my life, I was working really hard in sports. I was trying to get as many scholarship offers as I could, and I had already gotten a couple for some community colleges, but when I thought of cross country, I thought maybe this was a way for me to get some more scholarship offers and give myself a better opportunity to pay for college. So I went ahead and walked into the meeting, and the cross country coach told us about the meets, and he finished off and he told us that if we were interested, to go ahead and sign the paper at the end. I remember I was the last person to walk up and sign the piece of paper. I waited for everybody to walk up there first, and when I walked up there, I took the pen in my hand, and I asked the coach, I said, is it okay if I join the team without playing or running in any of the Saturday meets? And he told me, that's fine, you won't be running as many meets as the rest of the team, but we would still like to have you on the team. So I went ahead and signed the paper, and that summer I started cross-country conditioning, and it was horrible. Running that long, we would run up to 8 miles a day. It was exhausting, but I stuck with it, and he started having me practice with the guys to see how fast I could run. And for the first meet, he told us that the team plan was for me to stay with the top 2 girls on our team, and after the first mile to take off and just see what I could do. So I remember standing at the starting line, and I was looking at all these other girls. I had never ran cross country in my life. I had never ran 3 miles all at once either, besides cross country conditioning. And I would look at these girls and I thought, feeling like David, I wonder if this is how he felt when he faced Goliath. All these girls had so many years of experience, and some of them they looked intimidating. So I knew for sure that they were not worried about me beating them. But I prayed before the race, and I asked God to just let me do my best. So I started the race, and at the mile mark, there was still quite a few girls ahead of me. It was probably half of the girls running that race that were still in front of us. And slowly I started to pass them one by one. And I was singing a song in my head while I was passing them. It was a song in Spanish, but I'm going to go ahead. I translated the words for you. And these were the words to the song. I can trust him. In every step my God is with me, and I have peace. I pass the storm safe and hidden in the Lord. To my surprise, as well as everyone else, I won that race. Nobody was expecting this. It was my first year running cross country, and it's very unexpected for someone who had never run cross country before to do well in a race and to much less win a race. But this was just the start of my journey. I ended up winning all the races after this. So you can see there, I have a picture of me receiving an award. I was not expecting this at all. It was exhausting. Like I said, I was in several organizations. Sometimes we would have practice in the morning, and I would have to get home from a meet the day before at around 11 p.m., and I still had to get home, eat something, go to sleep, do homework before going to sleep, and then just do whatever I had to do to prepare for the next day. So this was physically taking a toll on my body. I was exhausted. I wasn't I wasn't eating very well because I was just going from one place to another. My parents tried their best to feed me as much as they could because I was burning so many calories. But I felt worn out, and this made me get sick. So this was on a day of a race. I had a race in Bueller. That day, and I had a habit of reading my Bible verse in the morning. But this day I had just woken up. I grabbed my jersey, threw it in the gym bag, and I headed for school. And I didn't read my Bible verse that day. But at school I was just praying constantly. I physically felt like I wasn't going to be able to finish that race. So I was praying, I was going through the hallways, and I looked so bad that there was just random students asking me in the hallway if I was okay. And I was really scared. I didn't know if I was going to do well that race, and I just remember praying constantly. And when I got to the race, we set out our tarp and we started stretching out while the JV team was running. And I got a notification on my phone. It was from my Bible app, reminded me to read my verse of the day. And the verse that I read was Isaiah 40:30-31. And I'm going to remind you where it says, "But those who trust in the Lord will renew their strength. They will mount up on wings like eagles. They will run and not be weary. They will walk and not faint." And as soon as I read, "They will run and not be weary," I knew that God was answering my prayers. I knew that He was going to be with me that race, and that He was going to help me finish. And I know that it can be hard whenever we have worries. Worrying is just such a natural part of our everyday life. I was constantly worrying that day that I wasn't going to finish the race. You might be worrying about what's going to happen at work this week, or I have another worry of maybe what's going to happen with my assignments this week. So worrying is just something that happens that we all do, and it's just things, we worry about things that are beyond our control. And why not hand those things over to the person who does have control over them? So I learned in this race that I needed to trust in the Lord and hand over my worries to Him. If we can open our Bibles to 1 Peter 5:7, where it says, "Cast all your anxiety on Him because He cares for you." We find other proof of this in Psalms 55:22. Where we can find that it tells us, "Cast your cares on the Lord and He will sustain you. He will never let the righteous be shaken." I started this race and I knew that God was going to be with me, and during the whole race I was repeating that verse in my head, "You will run and not be weary." And not only did I finish this race, but I also broke the record at that meet that day. It was the cross country, the record for that course. And I remember after the race, I started to pray. And it was the first time that my team joined me in prayer after a race. They started to pray with me, and as soon as I saw that, I knew that God was using me to be a blessing for He was not only blessing me, but He was also using me as a blessing for others. And when I saw them praying with me, it reminded me of the time that Jesus healed the blind beggar. We can see in Luke 18:43 that it tells us, "Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus, praising God. When all the people saw it, they also praised God." We have the privilege of being examples for other people, and there's always going to be people in our circles of influence that are going to see how God blesses us and how we praise God for those blessings, and they will want to join us as well. We can see proof of this when Apostle Paul told us in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1, "Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ." After this race, when my team joined me in prayer, It was the first time that they had done this, and in the next race, we would usually warm up and at the starting line, and then we would go up to an open area and we would talk about our team plan, and sometimes our team captain would say a quick prayer. But at this next race, they asked me to pray with them. It was the first time that my team had asked me to pray with them. I saw how God was using me, and I was thankful for it. So we went ahead and started that race. And at this race, we won first place as a team. But this wasn't, this was just the start of my journey of being able to share God's blessings. And we went ahead, and after we finished this race, we headed to another race. But the thing is that this was the first time I was going to run by myself. My team would not be running with me. They had a Saturday meet, and the coach had told me that he was going to take me to this other meet so that I could have the opportunity to run in a race that week. Everyone was telling me that I was foolish for not running the Saturday meet. At this Saturday meet, it was one of the courses where we were going to be able to make a personal record. There was several cross-country coaches that were going to be there watching us run, and it was a great opportunity. But this wasn't the first time that people had treated me in this way because of my beliefs. When you decide to live a gospel-centered life, there will always be people that you won't be welcome in every social setting around you, but just know that you're not alone. Jesus knew that this would happen to us. He was constantly treated as an outcast because of the gospel that he was sharing. And he gave his disciples a warning that this might happen to them as well. We can find this warning in Luke chapter 9, verse 5, where it says, "If people do not welcome you, leave their town and shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them." And I read this verse also in a different version of the Bible, and it said, "If you're not welcomed, leave town. Don't make a scene, shrug your shoulders, and move on." When I read this, I knew that God wanted me to continue doing what I was doing and to ignore the doubts that other people had about me not running on Sabbath. So I went ahead and went to that race, and I warmed up by myself. There was a lot of teams looking at me. They were so confused because I got up to the line and I was the only runner for our team. At this race, I was given the privilege of breaking the school 5K record, and the race that everybody told me I was foolish for running in. God gave me the strength not only to finish the race, but to break the 5K record that was currently being held at our school. This wasn't the toughest part of my journey yet. I still had my junior season, I still had one more race. And I went ahead and I wasn't able to run in the state meets or in the regional meets because those were also held on Sabbath. But I had a couple more meets, and I went ahead and just did my best in those meets, and my junior season was over. But I still played soccer that year. I got a couple of scholarship offers, but they were all to community colleges, and I was really interested in going to a four-year university. So I decided that year that I wasn't going to play soccer my senior year. And this was a hard decision. Soccer had been something I loved to do, but I knew that I wasn't going to be able to pay college if I kept playing soccer. So I started to apply for academic scholarships, and I continued. My senior year, I did run cross country, and when I was running cross country my senior year, I think that coaches didn't offer me scholarships my first year because it was kind of like they were a little bit skeptical of my running ability. I think they thought maybe it was first year luck or something like that. So they were waiting for me to show if I was going to have any improvement on my times. And I did. I came back the second year stronger, twice as strong, physically, mentally, and spiritually. And I ended up breaking my 5K record again. This was a big surprise to everyone. And I ended up heading to one of my last races. It was in Heston. When I headed to this race, it was just a normal race like any other. And I remember I was stressing out a little bit though because I was applying for scholarships, and I had been doing a lot of volunteer experience, and I had seen during practice the coach had handed some letters to some of the other runners. They were receiving scholarship offers, and I was waiting for one of those letters. So I ran in this race. And after the race, I had a cross-country coach walk up to me. And he told me that he wanted to offer me a scholarship. When I heard this, I was very excited. But he said that this four-year university that I was going to be running for, if I accepted, I would have to run Saturday meets. And I told him that that wasn't going to work out. That I didn't run on Sabbath. So he told me, how about this? I will offer you a full-ride scholarship if you accept to run at our university and if you run those couple of meets on Sabbath. I would be lying if I told you that I didn't think about it. I was scared. I knew I needed to pay for college. And I didn't know how I was going to do it. But I'm going to invite you to read Psalms 56:3, where it says, "When I am afraid, I put my trust in you." And John chapter 14, verse 1. "Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me." There's going to be moments in our life when God asks us to step out in faith. And it's going to be hard. It doesn't mean that you're not going to be afraid. It doesn't mean that your heart is going to not be beating out of your chest the way mine was that day. But when I stopped to think about it, all I could think about was all the times that God had had my back. And I told the coach that I don't negotiate running on Sabbath. I shook his hand. And I watched him walk away. I had been planning for this opportunity for 2 years, and it was hard watching him walk away with that full-ride scholarship offer in his hand. But I wanted to believe that God had my back, and I had full confidence that he was going to help me find a way to pay for college. So I ended up finishing that senior year, and I once again didn't run at the state meets or the regional meets because they were held on Saturday. I ended up having to turn down several full-ride athletic scholarships that year, and I had been applying for academic scholarships in hopes that I would get a scholarship to a four-year university that I was interested in. I got invited to go to an interview for one of the academic scholarships that I had applied for. It was the Rudd Scholarship, and I had to drive out to Wichita for that. I remember my parents drove, and I prayed with them before the interview. And I walked into the interview fully confident that God was going to be with me. So they asked me several questions. They were asking me about my volunteer experience, any leadership opportunities that I had participated in. And I told them that I had been involved in all those organizations that I talked to you about earlier. And they also asked me several questions about sports, and then they also knew about the Sabbath because I had written about it in my essay. So when they asked me about the Sabbath, I knew it was coming. They told me that there was several Saturday events that if I were to receive the scholarship, I would have to attend to as a requirement for me to keep that scholarship throughout the years. And they asked me if I were to get the scholarship, if I would attend to those events. And I told them that I wouldn't. If I did, I would be going against my religious beliefs, and I had faith that despite having to turn down several scholarships, I was going to be able to find something to pay for college. So I walked out of that interview, and I knew that if I got that scholarship, it was because I had to stay true to my faith, and because I had trusted that God was going to help me. But I also knew that if I didn't get that scholarship, it was going to be for the same reason. So I went back home, and I kept going to classes. The senior cross-country year was over, and I remember I waited about a month and a half, and I was surprised at my school. I received a full-ride academic scholarship to attend Wichita State University. And they told me that they had given me that scholarship because I had stayed true to my faith, and they admired that I would be willing to turn down a full-ride scholarship to stay true to my beliefs. I stand in front of you here today as an imperfect human being. But I believe that each and one of us was chosen for a greater good. And even though it might be hard sometimes, I want you to know that God has bigger plans for all of us, things that we can't even imagine. And I invite you all today to trust in the Lord. If you trust in the Lord, you will soar on wings like eagles. You will run and not grow weary. You will walk and not faint. Thank you.
Would you please stand for our closing song, I Will Serve Thee. I'm sure after a testimony like that, we all feel like we should.